Fantastic. So I am a journalist for a news publication site called CoinRivet. I've been working for them for around 3 months now, and I've just taken an active interest in the DeFi, the NFT spaces. So we have 3 attendees today. We have Wasim, Sachi, and Avery. If we could just go around and introduce ourselves. Could we start with you, Wasim?
Hi, everyone. My name is Wasim Ahmad. I'm Chief Crypto Officer of Vault 12. Vault 12 is a sister company of Gemini, Nifty Gateway, and OpenSea, and we focus on protecting NFTs and crypto currency, both in cold storage as well as for inheritance, which is the ultimate long-term storage.
Thank you, Wasim. Can we move to Sachi next?
Hey guys, my name is Sachi. I lead investments at Polygon. So basically we have a 100 million size fund, which focuses on investing in projects that are looking to build on Polygon or already built on Polygon. And we look across DeFi, Web 3.0, NFT, and gaming.
Excellent, thank you. And finally, we have Avery.
Hello, everybody. I'm Avery, and I run VaynerNFT. We are a consultancy focused on helping intellectual property owners navigate the wonderful world of NFTs.
Okay, fantastic. So I believe this panel is regarding the success factors that can contribute towards the success of an NFT. So I think the most natural question to start with would, what would you feel the most important factor for an NFT to be successful is in, let's say, the short term and the long term, just considering the rapid pace that the space is moving at? So start with you, Wasim.
Sure. I mean, as a security person, I'm going to say trust. People are just getting used to what is an NFT, what does it represent, the fact that it can be physical and digital, it's quite different from before. So trust, I think, in the short term. And then in the long term, something that I heard in the previous panel, the UX around doing stuff with NFTs is appalling. I mean, it's appalling in crypto. It's still not improved, and it's been 11 years. So understanding, experience, those kinds of things need to dramatically improve.
Okay, fantastic. Sachi?
I would say one of some of the important success factors for an NFT is probably, the community that supports it. And you can see this as an example, like, for example, Pleaser DAO, I would say, is, has been really good at, getting some NFTs get a particular amount of attention. That's because of the influencer community that Pleaser DAO has. So I think that's really important, just having like someone that is connected within the Twitter space, for example, that's able to attract the community for like a specific NFT drop. I would say the second thing is also the utility of an NFT. So I would say, like, back in the day, like in March, I would say when NFT started, it was basically just like an image. It didn't really have any utility or function, but now we're starting to see like NFTs evolving and actually having a utility, as you can see with like Axie Infinity, for example. You need to have this NFT in order to play a game, for example. Or today I was actually talking to someone about how these NFTs could potentially also generate yield for the holder. So I think, creating some kind of a incentive mechanism or utility for these NFTs really does create a lot of value for the NFT itself in the long term, because then people want to hold that NFT.
Okay, fantastic. And finally, Avery, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing for NFT success is really the community. So in the short term, it's building up a community. It could be bringing your own community to the world of NFTs. So if you have an existing community, getting them excited about NFTs, helping onboard them into this world, and then bringing the NFT community into your brand, your experience, and creating a community, I think is important pre-launch, but also for the sustainability of the program. Having a community who's excited about what you're doing and is giving feedback and shaping the direction of your program, I think that is really what makes and breaks NFT programs over time. Everything is really underpinned by community.
Okay, so alluding to communities, do you feel as if, let's say, Discord channels and Twitter influencers can make a big difference in a success of an NFT project?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Discord is the lifeblood of the NFT community, and it's it's an app that started off being really popular in the gaming community and has really become a cornerstone for any successful NFT project, is to have an active Discord community with different roles, sort of a chronological feed of what's happening, any project information really being like the source of truth for communication. And then Twitter, I think partially it's the influencers, it's also partially what they're doing in terms of spaces, having those as sort of like a real-time moment for communication and information. So I think they almost serve two different purposes, both of which can be super important in the success of engaging and inspiring a community for NFTs.
Okay, excellent. So going back to what Wasim said about trust, overall, this is a quick question for everybody. Do you feel as if a larger community and easier access to a community brings that level of trust that an investor might desire, especially if they're new to the space? So maybe we'll start with you, Wasim, your thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, I think everyone kind of is seeing this massive market opportunity for NFTs in the future, but it's all going to start with very, very specific niche markets, which speaks exactly to communities. And I think investors feel comfortable being involved in a discourse with people that they know because there's a shared agenda, there's a shared passion, whether it's music, whether it's some very specific artist that they're following. So as Avery said, I think, communities are, they're the building block of all NFT success.
Okay, fantastic. Sachi, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part is that they want to see these holders of the NFTs, hold on, like they want to trust that they really believe in the NFT. So they don't want, some kind of a pump and dump scheme, which sometimes happens where the influencer might like go on Twitter and like really shill their NFT and then do that because they want to sell, but they actually want to see, actual commitment to the NFTs. I think that's a really important component of trust. Like, the influencers are the ones that are really promoting this NFT should like really believe in the NFT rather than, trying to promote just for like a short-term gain.
Okay, excellent. So now that we've established that how a good community can establish trust, do you feel as if the access to purchasing an NFT is just at the moment, do you feel as if it's just a bit too much for the average investor? Like, I understand that there's a lot of moving parts to purchasing an NFT. Do you feel as if that can put the average investor off, or if somebody is committed enough to join a community, they'll go through those steps and actually buy an NFT?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in on this one. I think one, you can think about them as investors or sort of people in the community. And I think when you're designing an NFT, program or drop, it's important to think about who your audience is and who you want to be participating in this program and in this community. So, some NFTs are very low cost, some are free. I do think that there's a barrier to entry for folks who are new to the crypto world, and certain platforms have done a great job with onboarding people into that, whether it's, they accept fiat or they have really clear explanations and videos of how to actually get your wallet set up. I think some drops do that really well, where some drops really are catering to the existing crypto community. It really all depends on the objective of the program and who they're trying to get on board with. And one that I saw, come out yesterday that I thought did a really nice job of this, and they're not a client of ours, but thought it was awesome, was actually Playboy, right? Because Playboy has mass appeal to people all around the world and an iconic history and heritage. And they did, and like, it was something that they managed to do both. I feel a lot of times when you see programs that are trying to do both, they do neither. But I thought that they did a great job with having an ETH whitelist, which really engaged the crypto community, and also a Stripe integration, which made it easy for people who want to purchase in fiat to make that a sort of seamless transaction. And they had a bunch of educational support of creating your wallet address and all of that awesome stuff too. So I think the barrier to entry is high now, but if people want to learn and they want to be part of a community, especially if the price point is reasonable, like, under under that 1 ETH mark, I think there's much more likelihood that someone who's interested in a community would want to join the NFT component of it as well.
Okay, fantastic. Wasim, do you have any thoughts?
I can just share my experience of buying an NFT the first time, putting it in my MetaMask wallet, and could not find it. It was there on the blockchain, but it didn't show up anywhere. And it took me ages to figure out that, oh yeah, that's kind of normal, because they hadn't sort of improved the experience in the wallet. So I think you have to get past that first experience, and then obviously everyone's doing it. You know, people are doing this. So it's I don't think it's not gonna stop the initial early adopters. But I think, you know, when people talk about NFTs, you know, let's go beyond just art and think about how NFTs are going to be used in the world in the future. That set of people, you know, are going to need to see some improvements in the overall experience and how they consume and use and store and do those things with NFTs.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
I actually also wanted to add to Avery's point. I think, you know, NFTs have so much like opportunity in terms of onboarding, you know, the normal retail market and kind of get more familiar with the crypto space. So I think one of the things that one of my colleagues was emphasizing was the need to create a mobile experience that's more seamless. Like you guys were saying, how it can sometimes be really, there's a high barrier to entry sometimes on the technical side to just figure out like, how do you mint an NFT? How do I like navigate my MetaMask and such? But there's definitely a lot of talent going into that space. And I think eventually like that experience will be very seamless for a lot of these people. So I think, you know, it'll be really, we were actually talking about, you know, in the future, instead of having like tickets to a concert, you're just going to have like an NFT ticket for a concert, and you can just like, you know, maybe show your MetaMask and show your ticket there, and you can basically like enter a concert using that NFT/ticket. So like I think right now, yeah, there definitely is a barrier to entry because of, you know, some of the technical side. Like some people might not be able to you know, click the right buttons, but I think there's a lot of potential there, and we're going to get there pretty fast, where eventually it'll be intuitive for people to use an NFT to like get to a David Guetta concert rather than, you know, using like a ticket that they bought online.
Fantastic.
I just want to add something. I do feel that, you know, obviously there's avant-garde artists out there, but there are also a lot of creators that are, you know, struggling with, well, how do I mint an NFT? How do I get into this, tap into this new stream of whether it's revenue or whether it's community? And I think that the talent management companies and the media companies have a huge role to play in translating and helping, whether it's brands or artists, bands, or, you know, whatever it is, whatever type of creator that's already out there, to translate that into meaningful engagements for their fans. I mean, a lot of this is for the fans, and I'm involved with a music NFT company called Sonics, who were on a panel yesterday. I'm involved with some artists who, you know, create art that uses DNA, and, you know, they're all struggling with, okay, well, what's the right place? Which platform do I need to be on? What's the workflow for these things? And I think that there's huge room here for the kind of role that agencies have played in advertising, translating that over in this new world.
Okay, fantastic. We'll touch on that point next regarding talent management and IP rights. I just wanted to touch on Sachi's point about ticketing and such. I saw recently that FTX, especially Sam, he introduced a competition of some sort, and the winner received a ticket to a MLB game, which wasn't actually an NFT ticket, an NFT-based ticket. So my question is, the introduction of exchange-based marketplaces, i.e. we've seen FTX, Coinbase, and other OpenSea competitors really try and make a move to eat into some of OpenSea's market dominance. Do you feel as if the introduction of these marketplaces, especially through trusted exchanges and companies such as Coinbase and FTX, will bring a better level of education to the more retail-focused investor? We'll start with Avery, possibly.
Yeah, sure. I think that, you know, having more established and publicly traded companies like come into the fold, like, you know, Coinbase and what they're going to do with NFTs, I think it's going to bring in way more people. I think it's also going to give confidence to people who are concerned with the limited regulation and the sort of very nascent space that we're in right now. So I think it's a good thing overall. We'll have to see how this meshes with the existing community, which is all about decentralization, right? Is all about sort of you know, moving away from the more traditional financial institutions. So I think it's super important that this is a delicate balance that's struck, especially as Coinbase kind of like enters this world of NFTs. But if you look at what they did to buying Bitcoin and transform that experience for millions of people, I think it's a great example of what they could potentially do for NFTs.
Fantastic. Sachi?
Yeah, I think one of the pain points, especially for institutional players, is like custody of these NFTs. So right now we have a lot of solutions for, you know, holding tokens like Matic tokens, like Polygon tokens or Bitcoin tokens or Ethereum, but there's not really like a solution around, you know, actually like holding these NFTs. And that's a huge problem, right? Because imagine you have like millions worth of NFTs, but it's not properly like stored. So I think there is a lot of movement on that side, especially like Genesis, for example, they received like inquiries in terms of like how can I store my NFT and make sure it's safe. So I think and they're definitely working on it, like especially since the value of these NFTs has increased in the past couple of months. So once we're able to figure that out, I think we'll be able to bring in even more adoption like within the institutional space and also, you know, the retail space.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a great point for institutional investors and increasingly corporates who want to participate in this kind of economy, right? But in order for you to have an ENS domain, you have to be able to have like secure custody of your NFTs. And right now there is a little bit of a market gap because there isn't a solution which is very easy for folks to use. Like, yes, there are workarounds and things that you can do, but I think for institutional investors and increasingly for corporations who want to be involved in this ecosystem, they're going to need a way to custody NFTs beyond what's available now, which is kind of like ad hoc solutions.
Okay. Do you feel as if that's something that Vault 12 could accommodate, Wasim?
So Vault 12 is actually focused on consumer investors, not institutional, because we've seen, you know, translation of custody solution or consolidation of custody solutions under, you know, companies like Gemini and Coinbase. So I expect that they will move forward and, you know, improve the custody solutions on the institutional side. On the consumer investor side, like the personal investors that are out there, I think that definitely needs, you know, a lot of improvement. There's a lot of different things that people can do. And again, it boils down to, if you're a diehard, yes, you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of technical ways of doing things, but they're complex. And when you have complexity and security, people make mistakes, they miss things out, they write stuff down, and then that destroys a lot of the security aspects. And so Vault 12 is kind of focused on an end-to-end way of doing things that's very straightforward. It's sort of, you set it up, you forget about it. And as long as you keep adding your assets into a digital vault, you have everything in one place. It's not in the cloud, it's not on a device, so it's very, very safe from that perspective.
Okay, fantastic. I wanted to move on to Wasim's point that he touched on again about talent management and IP rights of particular projects. Recently, I've seen that Bored Ape Yacht Club and have been working with, I believe it's CAA, like a creative ad agency, to work with IP rights, which opens the door for so many opportunities, let's say TV, film, anything along those lines. Do you feel as if only the leading projects, i.e. the blue chips, will be open to that, or in the future there'll be a broader market for these NFTs to really expand on their IP and image rights? Let's start with Wasim, possibly.
Sure. I mean, I feel like you need different streams. You need the big, well-known creators and agencies to kind of legitimize doing this and proving that there's money to be made and fans to be, content for the fans to engage. And I think we see this with things like NBA Top Shots. But then you're going to have the early adopters, the creators who may be relatively unknown, who seize the opportunity. They're going to be pushing the limits, figuring out how to do things on their own. But I think coming along behind is going to be kind of the power of media companies, agencies that are very, very well versed in how to influence and put programs in place for marketing. Vayner being the top agency, the top company in this space, certainly in the digital space, right? And we need to see all of these streams flowing along to sort of move the average over.
Okay, Avery, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I agree with Wasim, and thanks for sort of sharing your perspective on like why a consultancy or an agency like ours would exist. Because I think it's you had brought up, Sean, that some of the projects which first launched as NFTs have become very valuable intellectual property. You're like, out of nowhere, right? Like Bored Apes Yacht Club is only a few months old, and this is already like an iconic cultural phenomenon, which is born first as an NFT. And you've seen the Larva Labs guys do the same type of thing, also launching IP as an NFT first, and then sort of going mainstream with it, which I think is really interesting. I think you'll continue to see some of the like top projects succeed in this kind of a way. It's amazing to be walking down the street and see somebody wearing a Bored Ape Yacht Club hoodie, or, in an example that's a little bit more close to home, VeeFriends, Gary Vaynerchuk's first ever NFT project, also started off as being these, just sort of beginning as NFTs that now have infiltrated certain aspects of mainstream culture. We've done a couple of things already, whether it's at Christie's or through collaborations with streetwear brands, and there's so much more coming. And what you're seeing is actually IP that was born as an NFT going into the mainstream and being able to influence culture in a broader way, which I think you will see a lot of that happening. And there's that. And then on the flip side, there is existing valuable IP that's coming to NFTs, helping brands or celebrities or talent or athletes who have this, their own community and their own IP and their own brand, tell that story as an NFT and develop a community around it. I think Wasim is completely right. It's a two-way street, right? It's going to be a little bit of both, where the top NFT projects succeed in mainstream culture and get Hollywood agents. And then some of the Hollywood stars need to get NFT consultants to tell them like, hey, this is why you need an ENS, and this is how you set up your wallet, and this is how you do a Twitter space, and this is why you need to reward your community, not just by doing a one-time drop, but by developing something with them over time. I think you're going to see both sides of it, and you really, and both are needed to really grow the ecosystem overall.
Yeah, it seems as if the trend of adopting an NFT as a profile picture is spreading throughout the celebrity community. Reese Witherspoon had one the other day. A lot of NBA players.
I think, Hassan is bringing up a really good point in the comments, just since I'm reading these, where he says NFTs have been hijacked by marketing departments. And I see the irony in this because I spent my whole career in marketing, but NFTs are really not a marketing campaign. And I probably say this like a dozen times a day to various like CMOs and marketing teams, is NFTs are inherently not a brand campaign that's a 3-month thing or a 1-month like pop-up PR activation. If you want a successful NFT program, it's actually something that's a foundational strategy that needs to be incorporated in your business. So I couldn't agree more with some of those comments in the chat.
Okay, so in terms of long-term success, i.e., long-term in the NFT space is quite a relatively new concept because it's only become so popular in the past 6 months. Thinking long-term, i.e. 2, 3, 5 years, how important would you say a roadmap and an active plan and an active community is to the long-term success of a project, possibly from an investor's point of view? So Sachi, if you could, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think actually this afternoon I was having a conversation about this, about how to make sure the the value of the NFT like sustains itself in the long term rather than it just being like a one-time drop. So he had like a really interesting idea, and it also touches on what you guys were talking about. There's this one NFT drop where basically if you buy this NFT, then you have the right to have like streetwear or like a sweater from the specific NFT. So I think initially this NFT was selling for like $2,000 or so. And then basically you get a package that arrives to your house, and it has like really nice packaging, and you get this actual physical like sweater that you can wear, and it looks like really cool. So you know, I think that merging of like the real world and also NFT is something very valuable. And then in addition to that, by holding this NFT, you're also able to get yield, or like you're able to get tokens from these NFTs. So then these NFTs in the secondary market would continue to sell for like an elevated value. So I think like creating that type of structure is an incredibly powerful thing that like in the past, I don't think some of these NFTs have really had. That maybe you hold the NFT, but then you don't necessarily receive any benefit from it. But in this new scenario, like you can, you know, get yield from the NFT, you can get like a real life like sweater in the real world. So you know, just like having that plan can be an incredibly powerful thing. And I think it'll be really interesting once we see like bigger brands, and big brands are already coming in, like Dolce & Gabbana and Gucci, trying to figure out like how they can get into the NFT space. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these different brands that we know, you know, in the traditional world, like Supreme, let's say, like implement this like NFT technology and promote their products.
Okay, yeah. So the real world utility is important, would you say? And the applicable nature of what an NFT is. I think a lot of people may purchase an NFT and actually want to do something with it in real life. And I do think that there'll be a lot more examples of real world utility in the future. Yeah. I think stemming from real world utility, there's also the concept of a DAO as well. A lot of new NFT projects are implementing DAOs to give their community a bigger say in, let's say, decisions. Do you feel as if a DAO is also important for long-term success?
Yeah, I mean, I think a DAO can definitely be a very powerful tool, and you can see that especially with Pleaser DAO. You know, what they did is really interesting. I mean, they've been working on a couple of things, but basically they have this Doge NFT that they fractionalized. So then you can buy like part of that Doge NFT, and I think it sold for like 4 million or so. So like technically the entire value of the Doge NFT is like 50 million or so. So you know, I think what's really important about these DAOs is the fact that, you know, it really does create a community, and like everyone feels part of it, and that's part of the reason why so many of these NFTs like promoted by these DAOs like creates traction. So you know, it really does come back to, you know, creating a very strong community, and a DAO basically creates that community that's necessary for the long-term success of an NFT.
Okay, fantastic. So moving on slightly, we can cover the topic of storage and security of NFTs. We touched on it earlier regarding institutions, but for, let's say, the average holder of an NFT, like a retail investor, they're essentially holding their NFT in a MetaMask wallet. So this question could be directed towards you, Wasim. Do you feel as if, as the NFT space continues to grow, there will be a rise in, one, the complexity of scams, and two, the amount of scams that happen?
Well, that's an easy thing. The answer is yes. We've already seen that, not only with NFTs, but also DeFi, which sort of preceded the NFT wave. So to answer your question, I'm just going to do it in two phases. So first is what are some of the scams? So a short sort of categorization of the scams is maliciously crafted NFTs, which are sent out as, you know, gifts, and people buy them, and, you know, there's nothing is delivered behind it. There was a a scam recently with Banksy, where someone was able to buy an NFT on Banksy's website for over 300K. And it happened because Banksy's website had a vulnerability. It had nothing to do with like some weird crypto hack. It was just a website hack. So people are going to come up with very, very innovative ways. Some of them may be like crypto technology specific, and some of them may be just the kind of psychological vulnerabilities that exist because people want to make a quick buck and will go off and buy something that they think should be trustworthy, but it isn't. And there were other hacks right at the beginning of the year on some of the platforms where accounts were all of the NFTs and the credit card numbers were taken, and this was because the people using those platforms didn't use 2FA. So just really basic security foundational things, and obviously the platforms can do more to shore that up, but security involves education, and I think we all need to kind of raise our general level of what do we need to know to be successful investors in crypto, DeFi, and NFTs. That's why we created a website called securemycrypto.org that answers those questions. But in general, NFTs, people need to kind of shore up their security.
So we feel as if more education for investors is needed.
Yeah, definitely education, and then the right tools. I mean, I think while I understand technology and I've been doing encryption and cryptography for many, many years, I don't classify myself as a super techie OG crypto user. I like solutions that are easy set up for me, and so I'm going to choose a very different security solution than someone who's been doing crypto for 11 years. So people need to kind of make those choices, have solutions that are easy to use. I find the hardware wallets out there, Ledger, Trezor, so incredibly complicated to do anything that goes beyond just storing it in my own personal safe. These things need to dramatically evolve. And just to point out something that I think many people think about, but they don't think about in terms of storage, the ultimate storage is the preservation of wealth as you pass it on down the line, i.e. inheritance. And so when you think about what's involved in passing on crypto assets or NFTs in the future, you have to think about how you're going to pass on the information about how to access something. Part of what goes into that, I'll make this super brief, is there's an NFT, which is registered on the blockchain. There's possibly a digital or a physical thing that's associated with that. And there's as Sachi put it, a yield or a royalty. And these royalties are going to continue. I don't know if they're going to continue for 5 years or 50 years or indefinitely, but they're logged in smart contracts and they're going to be out there. And so when we talk about storage or security, we need to kind of include all of those pieces, especially from a creator perspective, because you're going to need, if you want to pass all of that on, you're going to need to preserve the information about how you access that.
Okay, excellent. One point I wanted to touch on is, based on the amount of scams that have been going around recently, a lot of influential people in NFT communities, both on Twitter and Discord, have been awareing newcomers of, let's say, this basic security measures. And I found that most of the well-known reputable Discord communities are very on top of scammers, links, and any sort of hacks that may occur. Do we feel as if there's more of an onus on the platforms to, let's say, gatekeep security for the investor, or does the responsibility fall on the investor and the community to, let's say, spread the message and educate everybody? I think I'll start with you, Avery. You have some experience with community building.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also wanted to touch on something that you brought up before, Sean, that Wasim answered very eloquently, which is around the sort of scam aspect and how advanced some of the scams are. I think part of it is education, but part of it is also just market maturity. If you think about like when credit cards were first used, or when people first started getting on like using websites, like this is sort of a normal part of a very like early ecosystem, that some of this unfortunately like nefarious behavior does slip through the cracks. And I think, yeah, it's on people to educate themselves and be really, really, really careful. But also, I think as this market matures, we're going to see, far fewer of these things continue to happen. And I know it's, troubling for investors and individuals to get scammed or anything like that. You do hear stories about sometimes things getting returned. And for everyone listening on this call, one thing I recommend to everyone is to get into a cold storage wallet as soon as possible, whether using Ledger or one of the other solutions that exist. I think it's super, super, super important. So I can't remind everyone enough to get a cold storage wallet. And then I think on how to educate your community on that, it's the responsibility of projects and of NFT creators to also make sure that's super clearly communicated to folks. You will notice in a lot of Discords and Twitters and even creator bios, they'll put the exact link to buy to mint from. They'll remind people about all of the basic sort of security best practices, because unlike, a centralized authority or industry, there's no like calling Chase Bank to say you wanted a refund on your NFT, right? That's just not part of this world. So I think it's really important to underscore that and really share that message, especially as more folks are coming into these new communities.
Excellent. So, Sachi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the responsibility should lie on both like the consumer and also the platform. The consumer should take some time to really educate themselves and kind of read online and make sure that they have at least a basic understanding of whatever NFT drop is happening. But I think it's also important for platforms such as OpenSea, for example, to kind of take the initiative and make sure to like verify some of these projects. So like a problem that I saw actually just yesterday, there's this drop that was done by Altered State Machine, which is like a pretty good project, but they were facing problems on OpenSea where there were like a bunch of duplicates. So there were a bunch of people, trying to make a quick amount of money. So they literally called themselves also like Altered State Machine. And there was no way for the consumer to tell which one was the real one, because like ASM, like the original project itself wasn't really verified on OpenSea yet. So I'm actually going to make that connection right now so that that project gets verified and people won't be scammed anymore. But yeah, I think it really, the responsibility really depends on both the platform and also the consumer.
Okay, excellent. So Hassan has just brought up a very interesting point in the chat about OpenSea and their, let's say, call it front running scandal, where one of their previous employees was found to be, let's say, buying and selling NFTs before they appeared on the front page, which automatically brought more sales. Do we feel as if that led to a level of distrust in OpenSea? And how do you feel as if it has affected people's viewpoints of NFTs as a whole? Because everybody uses OpenSea. There's probably 90% of the NFT community uses OpenSea. So for the leading marketplace to be caught in such a scandal, do we feel as if it affects the long-term success and trust in the industry? Start with Wasim.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen these kinds of scams in traditional financial markets. We see it in crypto. We've seen it in DeFi. We've seen it everywhere, and I think we will continue to see it in the metaverse and beyond. OpenSea, I think, when they figured out what was going on, they were pretty swift. So I think, the greed aspect, I think, is pretty. Not understand. I mean, it's not okay, but people understand that these things happen, and I think it really revolves around how does the platform deal with it, and I think they were pretty swift.
Okay. Sachi.
Well, I think it'll be interesting as we see like how the market evolves in 2 years or 3 years or so. I'm curious, because right now you're right. Like I would say whenever you're buying or selling an NFT, I my default is like OpenSea. But it'd be interesting to see like in 5 years, like what are the dominating marketplaces? Like, is it still going to be OpenSea, or is it going to be like multiple platforms? And I think that'll make it like a lot healthier in terms of like competition, because I think like it shouldn't be a monopoly. It should be decentralized. So there should be like multiple marketplaces, so that, you know, if something like this happens and, you know, people, you know, kind of end up not trusting OpenSea anymore, they have the option to go to like another marketplace.
Okay, excellent. And finally, Avery.
Yeah, I think that was disappointing to see what happened with OpenSea, but it's something that I think has happened in a lot of other industries where there's a lot of money to be made, right? This is not something that's totally new, front-running projects, the same way that you know, there's regulation that exists in terms of material non-public information for employees at banks and in other investment vehicles. So I think one positive consequence that will probably come out of this is you know, development of policies around that for employees of you know, firms that have access to information like this before it becomes public knowledge. I know it definitely inspired us at Vayner to just get super serious about this and make sure it's been really, really, really clearly communicated to our team, which you would think it's obvious, but just a good reminder for everybody that the, you know, the right code of ethics behind having information to projects before they drop, particularly since some of them, you know, have tremendous financial potential.
I think it opened a lot of people's eyes.
Exactly.
To let's say the maturity of the space, just how early perhaps we all are and the things that need to be ironed out. But I feel as if eventually when these things get ironed out, it's going to be less friction for the entire space. Okay. So one final question, I believe we're sort of running out of time here, is it's a very blanket question. In your opinion, what do you feel as if is holding back the NFT space from really succeeding and, let's say, rocketing, to use crypto terms, like, let's say, something like the DeFi space, which has seen just incredible growth in the past year? What do you feel as if are like limited factors?
I think it's on-ramping people. It's making it easier. It's having an easier on-ramp for people, I think is the number one thing that we, as a group, need to enable, right? It's like making this easier for people to participate. I have so many friends and family members and colleagues who tried to get an NFT and they just give up because it's too confusing. So I think as soon as that becomes easier for people and it goes from needing to have 5 different apps to maybe even just 2, maybe it's 1, I think that makes it so much easier for people to participate and get excited about this.
Okay. So barriers to entry in education, would you say?
Yeah, I think barriers to entry in terms of technology. And I see someone here, Jason, points out gas prices, which can also be pretty off-putting to someone who's new to the space. We always try on our drops to make sure that we're really like actively over communicating around gas and explaining what it is, explaining it's like shipping, you know, trying to come up with an analogy that makes sense to people who aren't familiar with this kind of term. But I agree that's a challenge. I think the main one is really around technology though, and having a more seamless and better user experience. But if you all remember like your first iPhone, you know, technology comes a long way very, very fast. And, you know, I think that you could argue that the NFT industry is already mooning, but there's so much more to go.
Okay, fantastic. Sachi?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of ways to like attack this. I think the first one is, you know, people just need to be more educated in terms of like how to like buy an NFT, like the fact that you need to have ETH in your wallet. That's, you know, that's not intuitive, especially if you first start off. Like I remember I struggled, you know, doing a transaction because I didn't have any ETH or like Polygon in my wallet. And I think the other thing that would also be very powerful it'd be really interesting to see people work on like a mobile device where you would like use this application, and basically in the background you'd be, you know, trading NFTs or, you know, selling NFTs, but you wouldn't even know the fact that it's like, you know, being done on the blockchain. So I think, yeah, like the next step is really making that user interface seamless. And I know there's a lot of apps that I've talked to that we've also considered investing in where they've really emphasized the fact that like when you're using this application, you don't even know that you're buying or selling an NFT. It's like, it's that seamless. And that's what we have to see like broadly across the industry, because I think right now it still hasn't gotten to that point yet. Like there's some missing parts, or like if you use MetaMask, for example, like sometimes on your mobile device, it can be a little bit clunky. So, so, you know, being able to go past that will really drive a lot of mainstream adoption.
Okay, excellent. I do remember seeing a tweet last week saying if somebody solves the one-click like Amazon issue with buying an NFT, then that platform is going to be the winner. I do remember seeing that. And finally, Wasim, you have any thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, I think I mean currently you do stuff with NFTs on a variety of different platforms, and it's kind of siloed. So if you're buying, you know, on Nifty, that's where you're kind of doing all of your activity, and then you'll maybe go off and do something on OpenSea because you heard about another artist. But I think that in the future, and it may take 5 years, but you know, a little bit more interoperability so that I can showcase my NFTs. I can donate them to nonprofits. I can do, you know, many more of the kind of the community style things, but across platforms and across communities. And I look forward to that being in place. But I think that's something that's kind of further down the line.
Okay. So let's say cross-community and utility of the actual NFT.
Yeah, portability.
Okay, fantastic. One final thing I wanted to touch on is multi-chain NFTs, i.e. Solana-based NFTs and Polygon-based NFTs. Do we feel as if they have a place, or eventually the Ethereum market will eventually just sort of overpower them and they'll sort of fade away? Start with Sachi, actually, if you're in the Polygon space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to have an alternative solution, because I think this congestion problem with Ethereum is going to continue. Like and that's part of the reason why we created Polygon, because we need a Ethereum like scaling solution. So I think the future, like, it's not going to be limited to just Ethereum, because, you know, I don't know if you guys have tried minting an NFT on Ethereum, but the cost is absolutely ridiculous. And you know, that's not sustainable, especially if you want to onboard more retail users. Like, let's say you want to buy like a ticket for a sports game, like it can't cost $300 to you know, mint that NFT. It has to be like $1 or a fraction of that. So I think I really do strongly believe in, you know, Polygon, and because you know, for minting these NFTs, it has to cost a fraction for it to actually become like adopted in the mainstream. So I think the future, it's not going to be just on Ethereum, but it's going to be, you know, on multiple chains.
Okay, fantastic. Avery touched on gas fees earlier. As you said, there can be a very limiting factor to somebody actually wanting to mint or purchase an NFT, even off aftermarket. Let's say the average gas fee to purchase an NFT on OpenSea is about $70 or $80 now, which is actually which can be quite unsustainable. Avery, do you have any thoughts on, let's say, cross-chain, Solana, Polygon, even possibly Cardano, totally. Avalanche?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the future is cross-chain for sure. If you look at where the activity is right now on successful NFT projects, it's on ETH. I think that's going to change over time for a number of different reasons. But as the space diversifies a little bit, I think it's totally expected. And, you know, I love what the guys at Polygon are doing. So congrats to you and your team, Sachi, on what you're building. We've done some stuff there too. I think it really just depends on like I said earlier, right? Who you're targeting. Like, are you going for the like ETH maxis and the like NFT OGs? And for them, it's going to be important to be on Ethereum, or are you going for something that you could, you know, scale out to millions of users, which would be a different use case. So I'm super in the feeling that, super of the mindset that the future absolutely will include multiple different chains, and that's normal, and it'll probably only develop out over the next couple of years as the space matures.
Okay, fantastic. Finally, Wasim.
I agree with what everyone said already. Multi-chain. I think what I hear is, you know, ETH is pretty far ahead in terms of the kind of the size and quality of NFTs and NFT projects, and I think others have to kind of catch up, and the projects have to do a good job, the platforms have to do a good job. of maintaining that quality, that quality level. You can't just have the same art that's on the ETH chain over here on another chain, and it's just a copy of it, and there's nothing new or different or unique about it. Like I think there needs to be greater efforts to take that uniqueness on the creator side and bring that to the different chains. And I'm sure that's going to happen. So, we need choice out there. That's what blockchain is all about, is giving people choice, decentralizing so that no one entity is controlling everything. So yeah, that's where I see it going. Okay,
fantastic. Well, I think we're coming towards the end of our panel. I think it's time we open it up to some Q&A from our audience. I do have a few questions here. The first question is, are NFTs a bubble? Just a very
everything's a bubble.
Yeah,
everything starts with a bubble, even the universe.
It's a very commonly asked question, and I feel as if I think it's quite a difficult question to answer as well, because there's a lot of moving parts in NFTs. Does anybody have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think no, there's definitely cycles. That's just like part of how like basic economics works, right? Like there's always going to be a bubble as you go through like, different phases of the economy. So, we saw that bubble back in March where NFTs became mainstream, and like Steve Aoki, like all these big celebrities were doing NFT drops, and then it kind of like died down, and NFTs in gaming was dead for a little bit. And now we're going up that cycle again, where we're seeing it's really interesting. I love seeing the evolution of NFTs, because now it's not just like an image, but now you're seeing actual utility for these NFTs. So like basically the complexity of these NFTs have really evolved for this next cycle. And then I think there's probably going to be a drop again, but overall it's going to be trending upwards. Like people are going to find like more ways to utilize these NFTs. And in general, I think with crypto also, like we're going to be seeing cycles, and that's just like the natural way. Like that's how that's like basic economics, but overall we're going to be trending upwards.
Okay, fantastic.
To add on to that point, we tend to look, or many people tend to look at this from the lens of, on the one hand, celebrities monetizing celebrity basically in NFTs, and on the other hand, from a very speculative, how can I make money in the shortest amount of time perspective. But there is a utility that goes beyond. And we'll soon be in that phase, and we'll soon be looking at NFTs from that perspective on a normal basis. And I'm very passionate about nonprofits and finding new ways to fundraise for nonprofits. And one of the best things you can do is mint an NFT and give the royalties to a nonprofit, and they'll be getting those royalties for a long time. If the art is good and it changes hands, they'll be getting a nice yield royalty stream. And I think some of those kinds of uses, are yet to enter mainstream consciousness.
Okay, fantastic. There's a question here from Robert, who says, why do NFTs have so much more hype than fungible tokens, i.e. mainstream cryptocurrency assets? It says, is it because NFTs have more consumer-facing application? And he touches on how these projects are in real time solving real-world problems, i.e. remittances, supply chains, Oracle solutions, etc. Do we feel as if, let's say, they're perhaps slightly overhyped, or that they're actually bringing the utility that these assets bring? Perhaps Avery, we can, or Wasim.
Good question. I think that there's a lot of hype in, yes, NFTs, but also other kinds of tokens and also cryptocurrency. I feel like people kind of bucket. Sometimes people don't delineate them the most specifically. I think there's just a lot of excitement around all parts of this ecosystem at the current moment. I think one, NFTs is just like a weird acronym. So I think it's kind of like sticking in people's heads, almost like World Wide Web back in the day. So I think that sticks in people's heads a little bit. And I also think some of the most newsworthy stories or buzzworthy things have been coming out around NFT projects, whether it's like the profile picture kinds of projects or celebrities. We've mentioned this a couple of times on this panel, that celebrities are driving a lot of mainstream adoption and buzz around this term. So I think that's probably why. But I would argue there's far more users participating in the DeFi space and cryptocurrency than there are in the NFT world in actuality.
Okay. And Wasim, I believe you had something to say.
Well, I totally agree with what Avery said. I think when you talk about hype, we really are talking about the speculative hype that we saw in the cryptocurrency markets in 2017. And, some of that has gone away because projects have been busy delivering, having raised money, they've been delivering the actual apps. And we're starting to see this year and next year, those apps come out. And I think we're still in the speculative phase on the NFT side, and we'll start to see as projects, as creators get funded and they start to really delve into the utility of their NFTs and start building things, whether it's in the metaverse or elsewhere, we'll start to see a different conversation emerging. And there's going to be projects that are successful with their communities, and there's going to be projects that have to go back and readjust their trajectory, and all of that is still to come. I think we're still at the very, very early. We're so early right now. It's amazing.
Okay, fantastic. Just one final question from me before we go. Let's try and keep it as short as possible. If you were to launch your own NFT project, what would be the number one thing on your list for long-term success? Let's start with you, Wasim.
Oh boy. Something that is accessible for the long term, like some theme or meme or so not something that's just popular right now, something that has a little more depth to it, and will continue giving value and pleasure to people in the future.
Okay, fantastic. Sachi?
I think having these NFTs, by having these NFTs, you have exclusive access to specific events or parties and such. And I'm actually seeing this in NFT NYC, where some of the events require you to hold an NFT to get to a party or an event. So I think that's one way to actually engage the community.
Fantastic. And finally, Avery.
Yeah, no, I think it's I'm excited about the future potentials as well of using NFTs for a million things. But I think that I'll get back to my earlier point. Community is everything. Community is the successful element, the most important thing. And then I think the secondary element will be utility and value. And that can come in a lot of different ways. It can come through to some people, it's valuable to have a special Discord role. To some people, it's valuable to get a t-shirt. Some people, it's valuable to get to go to an event. But that's that element of utility beyond just ownership of artwork, I think is going to be really important for projects over time. Some of the OG projects don't have that, like CryptoPunks, for example. Well, I guess, you've gone first access to certain Larva Labs things, but that was more of an art forward utility. And I think as we look at other projects, the ones that will do really well beyond just art are those that possess, an interesting utility.
Fantastic. I feel as if I've been thoroughly enlightened on NFTs today. So I'd just like to thank Wasim, Sachi, and Avery for their participation. And I hope everybody has enjoyed the panel.
Thank you so much, Sean. And thanks, Sachi and Wasim as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Hopefully see everyone the first week of November in New York.
Next week.
Next week.
Yes, I'm pumped.
I wish.